Hi everyone and welcome to a special Blitz compilation review. Yes, I mentioned on the last Q&A that in order to catch up with a lot of games, some of them are going to get detailed reviews and some of them I have to reserve for the podcast or Blitz reviews. But even doing a single Blitz review for a single game takes a lot of time, and I want to focus more on the top 10 lists and that as well. And also the top 100 that I'm doing at the moment. So I figured the idea would be to do some Blitz reviews in a kind of compilation fashion. I used to do this a while back and people were quite positive about those, and it allows me to review more games, give my opinions, and try and stick to the Blitz format as much as possible. So here I've got 4 different games that I've wanted to talk about. We have got the newest expansion for Arkham Horror, the card game, which is in the new format. Can't really talk too much about the cards, but I want to talk about the format and whether this is a good idea or not. Dreadful Circus, a new game from Bruno de Fedudi and Portal Games. Kokopelli, new game from Stefan Feld and Queen Games, and Dominant Species Marine from GMT Games. I guess we'll go for Arkham Horror, the card game first. Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. Yeah, wasted packaging. I mean, the packaging does not need to be this big. I'll tell you what, this is what you get in the box, okay? This is what you get. 2 bags of cards, 1 rulebook, which is only literally about, 2-page sheet, and the little cards that you use to put them on the map. That's it. That's all you get in this box. This box is only that big to accommodate this. This could have been a much smaller packet if you just condensed it down and made this a 4-way fold. Honestly, I mean, if you want to talk about wasted packaging, this is certainly up there. But at the end of the day, this is meant to be something you dispose of, because all it essentially is a card expansion for Arkham Horror LCG, specifically Investigator cards. So you've got 5 new Investigators in this pack, 1 for each of the colours, each with their own sort of strengths and weaknesses. And then you've got a bunch of cards for all the different factions that you can add to your collection. Now this is part of a new move that Fantasy Flight are doing, where they're now basically going to say, you know what, we're done with all these little plastic packs. Now granted, Marvel Champions is still following this front, but at least for Arkham, and soon probably for Lord of the Rings LCG, they're going to do this format where an Investigator expansion and a Campaign expansion come out for each cycle. 1 has all the Investigator cards and 1 has all the Campaign cards. Most people who are collecting the game will get both. But you might be able to go, you know what, I've barely got through the campaigns as it is due to time, but I'd like to have more cards to pick from. Then you just grab this and ignore the campaign one. And vice versa, if you think, you know what, I've got enough cards in the collection, I don't really need any more, although I'm interested to see if there's anybody in the comments who actually says they go down that route, they can just get the campaign expansion. But on top of that, it means it's easier to get hold of for new players. The problem with those little packs is that they came out, go out of print, and then it's a nightmare to try and find specific ones. You might be able to get the first couple, the last couple, and then the third one's out of print. And you're like, oh, come on, I gotta get the third one or I can't even play the scenario. This now means you get everything in one box, and because they're going to reprint the Dunwich cycle first in the first quarter of 2022, it means that you'll be able to say, oh, I want to get into this game. Oh, I can just get the first cycle in 2 boxes. Boom, done. And then when they do the subsequent cycles, it'll be the same deal. Now, don't worry, if you are like somebody like me who's got all the old content, I think you'll be able to print and play any of the new stuff, and even then I don't think there'll be that many of it. So predominantly, it's mainly just if you couldn't get the old cycle packs. But I think this is a solid move for the format of this game, because those little packs get annoying. You've got to pay for each one when it comes out, and you've got to pay postage for someone to send it to you. They're like £14-15 a pack by the time I've got through with it. So £15 per pack. Here, you're spending probably around, say, 40-50 quid for the campaign expansion, and then about 35 odd for this Investigator one. So granted, it's still not cheap, but you pay it all in one go and you get everything. And in some way, you could argue it kind of works out to be a little bit cheaper, I guess, doing it this way. But it kind of depends on where you get your cards and that from. But like I say, I like this format, and I hope they start doing it with the other games as well. I'm fairly positive they're going to do it with Lord of the Rings LCG. Be interesting to see if they can do it with something like Marvel Champions, although Marvel Champions is a bit of a different format. So in terms of the cards, I don't play this game well enough to tell you, oh, these are powerful cards or these are stupid cards. No. Yeah, there are podcasts out there for people who do that sort of thing. But essentially, you get a bunch of cards. It doesn't look like much, but trust me, when you put these into your folders, they're going to take up a fair bit of space, and I've already got 3 of them as it is. But the Investigators are interesting, to say the least. I'm just going to briefly mention what they're kind of like. Daniela Reyes, the mechanic. So after an enemy attacks you, even if it was cancelled, you either deal damage to it or automatically evade it. So she's basically like a typical fighter, like go dish out the damage, but in a way, she kind of wants people to attack her, and she gets little bonuses, for doing it. It's like, oh, it's kind of like a retaliation mechanic. You attack me, I'm gonna hurt you back. My worry with this one though is, when I've played her, it's a case of, yes, I can dish out the damage. Yes, I'm happy for you to attack me. How often do you actually want the enemy to attack you? So I don't want it to hurt me this much. So you're gonna want some healing ability with this character. Norman Withers with the big grimoire and the Harbinger weakness. Ooh, this one's fun to play. Yes, like super intelligent, cannot evade for toffee, but you play with the top deck of your card, the top card of your deck revealed. It's a bit like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings LCG actually, and you can play a card from the top of your deck once per round at a discount. So you are basically able to not only have essentially a bigger hand size because the top card of your deck is part of your hand, but you get to play it slightly cheaper as well, all while having extremely high investigation and willpower. Yes, you can't evade for toffee, and yes, you probably aren't going to fight for toffee. You are a seeker though. That's kind of not what you do really. So you've got your two highest stats in what really matters for you. You are just going to have to accept that in solo mode this is a hard one to stay out of combat with, and in 2-player really pair them up with a fighter. Pair them up with like the Nathaniel Cho boxer or something. Or instead you could pair them up with this lovely lady. She's got quite a lot of cards associated with her. Lily Chen, she's a fun one, the martial artist. You basically have these discipline cards. So you've got like the alignment of spirit, quintessence of thought, I don't even know how to pronounce that, the prescience of fate, the balance of body. So she's all like very martial arty, but she's a mystic. Normally the fighter characters are the guardians, but here a mystic is actually a pretty decent fighter. 4 fight value, 3 evade. That's kind of a slight worry. Her stats are kind of balanced, and sometimes you really want an all or nothing build with your characters. But these disciplines basically give you some cool ability as well as a stat boost. So if these stats are balanced on a card, you can make up for it with these. But the idea is that you essentially get the bonus and then you use the ability, you flip the card over, it becomes broken, and then you basically have to fulfill another condition to flip it back over. So it's basically a juggling act of flipping up and over your various disciplines while also dealing with the fact that you've got the weaknesses in there, which is prone to having a lot of them in there depending on how many of these you have in there. The more disciplines, the more weaknesses. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's done a optimal build, but I don't care about that sort of thing. So I like this one because you can go down that kind of mystic route of, oh, all right, fine, I'm gonna, do all my magic-y stuff. But most mystic decks are exactly the same. I like to see some variation, and this one I think is a nice way to vary it. Some cards have come out recently which kind of like transmute your body, or like, what was it? I can't remember, like increase self or whatever. They make you slightly stronger in combat, and most of the time people were looking at them and going, why would we want to be like that? Well, Lily Chen is a good example of that. So I tried her out briefly, and she's certainly a fun one to play, actually. I think this is one of my favourite mystics to try out, just because it's something different. And I love the whole martial art theme. Lily Chen's a fun character to play in things like Eldritch Horror. And yeah, give her a try. She's definitely going to be a fan favourite, I think. These two I'm not as big a fan of. We first got Monterey Jack, the archaeologist. And I tend to suffer with rogue and survivors anyway, but Monterey Jack the Archaeologist, at the end of your turn, if you started the round 1 location away from your current location, either gain a resource or draw a card. And if you started 2 locations away, you do both. So it's one of those like, get a little bit or do both. But really high evade, pretty good investigation, so not a bad pair of stats, but sucks in the fight and sucks like crazy on willpower. So the Mythos deck is going to absolutely rip this guy apart, but I don't know if this is the most fantastic ability in the world. I mean, granted, you're likely to move somewhere, so you're probably going to get at least 1 resource and 1 card, but I suppose it kind of makes up for those times when you've got to spend all your time just moving across the map, because then at least it kind of gets you a little bit of extra stuff. But I don't know what else you would really build with this character. A rogue that gets a little bit for moving. It feels like a kind of general rogue. Like, there's nothing about this character that says, oh, I'm going to build it like this. It's just, it makes something that's tedious in the game a little bit nicer for you. Although I do like his whip. The idea that it uses evade instead of fight, and if it succeeds, you can either deal +1 damage or automatically evade the attack enemy. That's pretty sweet. I really don't like this guy though, Bob Jenkins, the salesman. Now I suck with the Survivor faction, okay, so maybe I just suck with this clan. But the idea with this character, at any time an investigator at your location may reveal to you the item assets in their hand. You may take an additional action during your turn which can only be used to play an item asset from the hand of an investigator at your location. And both investigators can spend resources to pay the cost. I honestly, maybe there's some cards in, to come out to really make this guy shine. There's not that much in here that really makes him shine. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this character. I mean, obviously it sucks in solo mode. There is no use for this power in solo mode. So you gotta play it really with another player. But is it really that powerful an ability? I'd love to hear in the comments what you think. But, I've not played this character, I will admit. But yeah, I'm not seeing the power of this one. But then I tend to say that about a lot of the Survivor characters, and yet some people have a field day with them, so what do I know? I'm much better at playing Mystics and Guardians, typically. Mystics, I can do kind of anything I want, but Guardians, I like protecting people, and it's pretty easy to just beat up stuff. So they tend to do better with those. But as I say, that's just a very brief overview of what I think of the characters. But like I say, overall, Edge of the Earth is solid. If you want more cards for your deck, for your game, then by all means, just grab them. It's more cards. If you love the game, you've already got this anyway. But it's a good way to get the older stuff when they start republishing them in this format. So yeah, good on you. This is a good change. And I'm now going to chuck the box away because I have no use for it. Right, spent a while on that one, so apologies. Let's move on quickly to Dreadful Circus, a Bruno Fatuti game from Porto. And if you know Bruno Fatuti, you know that he basically just goes, crazy fun. Yeah, this is kind of Bruno's shtick. Chaos and fun are generally what he likes to do. Screw control, you don't have as much. Although, in this game, essentially what happens is the circus theme is completely wasted. I mean, it's just an excuse to have funky artwork. And granted, the artwork is pretty cool. You get a bunch of these little tuck boxes, which annoyingly you have to punch out and assemble every single one. That's a little bit annoying. I would have preferred it if they just put little tubs in there, but I wonder how much that would have added to the cost of the game. But once they're assembled, they'll stay together. It's just like, it's a little bit annoying. But then you do get a deck of really nice funky cards, which I do really like, with, very sort of kind of weird artwork. This is almost like something like that Bruno Fala game, what was it called, Imaginarium? Kind of reminds me a bit of that, but it's got this very dark Circus Olay types feel, and I'm gonna say, I like the way it looks, and the colors pop, red, yellow, orange, purple, pale blue even, the cyan as it might be called, or turquoise, and they really do pop, and it's a very nice high quality deck, and I really love the eye symbol on the back. Now the idea with this one is that you have a player screen, and behind it you will have your contracts, which are basically just tokens for set collection, some other like money, which is worth points. But what happens is players have a hand of these cards from the start of the game of two different types, and the idea is that they offer cards to the other players. So you play one out in front of you, and then people will put whatever they think they want to offer for the card in their little tuck box here, whether it's money or contracts, and they'll pass it over to the card they want to do. Depending on how many players there are, there might be one or two offers on the go, but you can only pick one. And the idea is that what happens is that this is basically a negotiation bluffing game. What the person making the offer has to go, right, let's for example say I got these three in front of me, these three boxes. They were for my card. I have to pick one of those to first look at, and I go, right, I'll pick this one here, the Rasputin one. You look in it and you see what they're offering you. It could be pretty much, you've got to offer something, but it could just be a copper coin, but it could be a lot of stuff. You have to decide there and then whether you want to accept the offer or not. You can't touch the other boxes. You gotta decide there and then. You're thinking, how much do you really want the card? Do I want you to have this card? Is this probably the best offer I'm gonna get? I don't know. Jacob over there, I know he really wants this card. He's probably gonna give me a lot for this one. So you know what? I'm gonna pass and give this back to you. But once you've passed, you don't get to take the box back. So it's a bit of a thing. And everybody can happily lie to your face about what they've put in their box. They can say, oh, you want to deny what you've got there. Look at mine. I'm telling you, I have given you the bee's knees. And then you've only offered them a copper. But then you go, second box. That was less than the other one. All right, that was a bit lame. Fine. All right, third box. Jacob, come on. You have given me a lot there. I know you want the card, but this is all points for me, so you know what? I'll take it. You accept the offer, it goes behind your screen, they get the card. And you rinse and repeat this for the other offers. The play goes round in that fashion, in a clockwise manner, until all the cards, except for 3, have been used up in other players' hands, and then you total up the points. Now, this has got pros and cons. And annoyingly, the pros are mostly about the gameplay itself. The cons are actually more about the ending. The pros of this is that I do like the negotiation part of this. It is good frantic fun. It's definitely like a proper negotiation game. People can trash talk to the heart's content. You can't make bribes, but you can try and coerce people into doing what you want to do. And these cards do lead themselves to some pretty interesting effects that can affect the course of the game. Some score you points in various ways, but others are kind of like one-off effects that let you like nick other people's stuff or swap things around or force people to look at your box first and stuff. There's some interesting cards here, but they're nothing too complicated, and there's a good amount of variety, and you won't see them all in every game. So you'll see the majority of them when you're playing with, say, like 6+ players, but it doesn't go up to 8. But for the most part, you're good. Now, like I say, gameplay, fine. The box does lie a bit about the time length. The time length on the box, I believe, says 45 minutes somewhere. It's on one of those boxes, I'm sure. Maybe it was on the rule book, but it says 45 minutes. Yeah, right. 45 minutes if you play this at the lowest player count, and even then, you're touch and go. No, this is like a 90-minute game. 60 to 90 minutes easily to play this, particularly if you got a lot of players. Yeah, you're doing 2 offers at a time, but the game's only going to move so fast. You probably want to have a timer for the rounds so people don't spend ages looking inside the coffins, because that can happen. But yeah, this is not a game you're going to play in 45 minutes and be done with it. No, it's just not going to happen. And some of that is down to the scoring. The scoring is a pain, absolute pain. You've got to score points for the coins, points for the contracts if you've got the most of a particular type, and also points if you have a set of different colours. Then you've got the cards that have different ways of scoring. So, okay, that doesn't sound too bad. Oh yeah, you've also got collection cards which score for sets. Okay, that's a fair amount to score, but where's the problem? There's no score pad!
What? Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Seriously, will it kill publishers to put a score pad in your frigging games? It's not hard. It's not expensive. Roll and Writes do this all the time and still charge £30 for their games. Can you not put a score pad in your things? And this one badly needs one. Somebody on BGG is going to come up with a score pad that you can print off and you can laminate, and that person, I think, should get 150 thumbs for that sort of thing and like donate 1 million geek gold to them, because it needs one. Because you might think, well, how hard can it be? Well, you've got to score the points, okay, so everybody's got to remember that already. Bear in mind, you're remembering this. If people haven't brought their phones, they haven't got calculators on them, then they're going to have to remember this. Then they've got to do the contracts. The problem is, you have to go around every single colour, which has 5, and say to people, right, I've got 3 of them, you've got 2, 3, 3, 3, right, I win this one, 4 points, right, remember I've got 4. Right, then yellows, okay, so you've got the most of that, right, remember you've got 4. Green, oh, remember you've got another 4, that's 8. And then, oh, don't forget to check how many sets you've got. Each one is worth 8, 4 of any types, that's fine, even though there's 5 colours.
So now I've gone cross-eyed.
It is fiddly as can be. You gotta get a score pad for this. And believe me, if I tried it, I had a makeshift score pad that I used for some games. I literally wrote out the columns and did it in order. Believe me, it made a colossal difference, but it's still boo for not putting one in this game. It's really badly needed. You've already made me assemble a ton of tuck boxes. The least you can do is put in a score pad. Ay, ay, ay. The rule book is not too difficult to follow, although I did have a bit of a problem where I think one rule contradicts the other. There's a rule with the end game where it says, finally, check if each player has exactly 3 cards left in their hand if they do proceed to scoring. Right, when I read that, I assume that means 3 cards left for every player. Okay, cool. The problem is, because of different card effects, you won't always be in that position. And then on the back of the rule book, it says, game end, where does it say game end? If any players has more than 3 cards in their hand, the sellers pass their seller tokens to the player on their left and a new round begins. Otherwise move on to endgame and scoring.
I don't get it.
That suggests that you don't always have the same amount of cards in your hand, and you basically keep going until everybody has, at max, free as opposed to exactly free. It's a little bit misleading, but the main way I can find that you play it is basically as soon as everybody's got 3 or less cards in their hand, you go to scoring. And this might happen at different times. But yeah, that was a bit of a confusing rule at first. So, Dreadful Circus is a decent game. You know, I mean, I didn't give the Card Investigator one a ranking because, frankly, how do you rank a Card Investigator expansion? But this one I'm giving a solid 7 overall. It's a decent, light negotiation game, a nice bit of bluffing, very nice aesthetics for the cards, and the tuck boxes, however made out of cheap card, are still nice to have. You know, I would have preferred little tubs, but for the cost, you're getting a relatively, you know, decent amount for a cheaper cost than most. The player screens are fine, they do the job, they've got the scoring on the back, so, you know, they're quite cool, and I do like the artwork. It's held back a bit by the fact that the game is probably too long for what it needs to be. The scoring is very fiddly without a score pad or something to that effect, or everybody's got calculators. And I swear the scoring actually takes longer than some of the rounds. And the fact that the rulebook could have been slightly better in 1 or 2 important areas. But overall, still enjoyed it. 7 out of 10. Worth a pickup if you want something, you know, a bit of a chaotic negotiation game with some funky artwork to look at. But, as I say, that's up to you. Okay, and now time to break the internet, I think. This is Kokopelli by Stefan Feld, and if you know anything about me and Stefan Feld... Get out! Get out of there! Yeah, suffice to say, Stefan and I don't have the best of histories. You know, lovely bloke, but I tend not to go for his games. Amerigo was the last time I really enjoyed a Feld game, and even then I sold that one because I eventually grew tired of it. But, you know, I have said many a bad word about games like Trajan and In the Year of the Dragon and Bora Bora, or Boredom as that one is called.
You're going to burn in a very special level of hell.
Basically, yeah, his games don't really wow me. They're very dry, the theme is completely, like, nonsensical, they never seem to look good aesthetically, it's like, they just don't tend to interest me. So, you can imagine my surprise when I played this one. A friend of mine showed me it, and I've been trying to get into more Queen games stock lately, and all he did was tell me that, well, no, actually, no, tell a lie, he did tell me who designed this one, Stefan Feld, right? But I wish he hadn't, because I went into this with a slight, oh, I don't know, a Stefan Feld game, but I'll try any game once, you know, we'll go with it. So, Kokopelli is a straight up abstract card game. Forget any motion of theme, there is no theme. And you'll notice I don't have the insert in here. That's because despite the fact it has game tray on it, I swear the insert was made for a different game. I don't know how you're supposed to store the cards in it in any decent way, but frankly, chuck that insert the second you get it. Just put the cards in bags, you'll get more space, and it's just a lot easier, okay? When I had that insert, I dreaded any notion of this falling on its side in my game bag. It was really not a good sign. But Kokopelli is a very simple card game where each of you has 2 boards. So the boards are basically connected together, nice and easy, again, forget the theme. And each of you has this in front of you. And the idea is that you are playing cards. I'm just going to get any old colour here, it doesn't really matter, but you're playing cards on here, and they've all got like abstract symbols with a special rule on them. So, for example, any player who plays a card to at least one of your ceremonies receives an extra action. When you complete a ceremony, you're awarded a VP. Draw an extra card when you do the draw card action. Play 2 cards to 2 different ceremonies. You know, stuff like that. And I know the abilities won't make sense for a second, but bear with me. But you'll have a hand of cards and your deck in the middle. And you only use so many of the cards in the game. Basically, there's these scoring tiles which represent all these different sets of cards, each with their own unique ability. And pretty good quality, I gotta say. I mean, the card quality and the board quality in this is pretty nice. Even if the artwork is supremely basic, it's still pretty striking. But you'll choose, I believe, 10 of these in each game, and so you've got, you know, a selection of about 16 odd different like effects, and you'll choose about 10. So there's variety in each game. I've even got an expansion in this, which basically adds another bunch of abilities there. So I've got a lot of different abilities that I can call upon. So the variety in this game is ridiculous. Even without the expansion, add the expansion and you're set for life. But with these cards, you will draw a hand, and you can basically do one of various actions, but most of the time you will be playing cards on your board in ceremonies, or columns as they are, and each ceremony has to be the same type of card. While the card is face up in front of you, you get the special power of that particular set of cards. But if you are able to play it on a neighbour's board, you're allowed to play on your neighbour's 2 boards there and your other neighbour's 2 boards here. So, for example, let's say yellow is... I'm trying to see if I can get it on the camera there. Yeah, let's see if yellow's playing here and there's their other board. I could play on these 2 as well, but there are certain restrictions that you have. So I might decide, no, I'm going to play that on your column there. But why would you do that? Because when your column gets to 4 cards full, you complete it and you take a scoring token off one of these tiles. So it's kind of like a race to complete ceremonies. But if you complete them on other players' boards, you're also giving them a slight bonus as well. Not to mention you're giving them the ability of the card when it's on there, so you got to be slightly careful. But with that said, you're getting points for the various card effects as well. I mentioned one earlier that said when you complete a ceremony, get a VP. Well, great, I want to complete as many ceremonies as I can. Oh, when an opponent completes a ceremony on your board, get a VP. Oh, in addition to the one I normally get, sweet. I'll invite the players to come do it. You get the impression that this is a pretty interactive card game, and it is. It's got that 7 Wonders feel. Let's say we're playing this as a 4-player. It goes 2 to 4, and it works pretty well at all player counts, actually. But 4th player sits over there, and I don't really care what that player does. It's just like in 7 Wonders. But I care what these 2 are doing, because half of their board I can play on, potentially, and they can play on half of my board each. So I'm interested to know what cards they're playing, what they've already played, what cards I play on my board, thinking, well, if you're thinking of like, oh, you want to finish the ceremony, maybe I'll just tempt you into finishing one of mine. Look, I'll put a 3rd card there. Go on, especially if you want to get rid of the ability. And you get points for cycling through your hands, so once you get rid of all your hands, you draw more and get more points, and you benefit points-wise from having a smaller deck of cards. So you're kind of trying to cycle through your deck as quickly as possible. But that's kind of the gist, and I gotta say, time to break the internet. I like this game.
I don't think any of us expected him to say that.
I really like this game. I know, it's crazy. And honestly, if you had basically, well, this is where it gets a little bit, I don't know if I want to say mean, but this is a Stefan Feld game I like because it doesn't feel like a Stefan Feld game, which I know is kind of weird. But if you had not told me the designer and just covered up that bit, I would never have guessed that this was a Stefan Feld game. Whoop, you stay up there where I can see you. So I honestly played this and thought, are you sure this is not a Reiner Knizia game? It felt more like a Knizia game or some other designer. I never would have guessed this was Stefan Feld. It doesn't feel like any of his other games other than the fact that it's dry and themeless. And I enjoyed this. It's simple. I can teach you the rules in next to no time. All the rules for the cards are clearly explained on them in text and iconography format, and you only use so many of them anyway. There's a basic set you can use and some that are slightly more complicated, but they're never too complex. They're pretty straightforward. The graphic design is easy to follow. These tiles are good quality. Everybody's got their own set of cards with a clear, distinct color for separating them out, and you've got some wild cards as well. But it's a cool little puzzle of trying to cycle through your deck. What abilities do I want to have on the go? Which do I want to get rid of and replace with a different ability because you've only got 4 columns? What can I do with my opponents to get points for myself rather than giving them too much of a leeway? It's like, there's a lot of cleverness, little clever things in this game, yet it's simple, smooth, streamlined, and pretty short. The game quotes 45 minutes on the box, and for a 2-player that is definitely accurate, if not quicker. But certainly this game should not take you more than an hour, even with 4 players and somebody playing reasonably slow. Granted, an AP person could make it drag longer, but no, you're talking about an hour for this game. It's neat. Now, that being said, I don't want to play this straight after I've already played it. Once I've played it once, I'm kind of good, even though the replay value is like top notch. It's just I kind of play it and I'm good, and then maybe the next week I want to bring it along and I want to play it again. But I don't want to spam like 3 or 4 plays of this like some other games that I love more. But yeah, this is really solid. And yeah, I told you, break the internet. A Stefan Feld game that not only do I like, I'm putting in the collection. Kokopelli gets a strong 8 out of 10 for me. Seal of endorsement, doesn't quite get to the 9 and 10s because this isn't one that I want to play over and over again. But, I certainly enjoy it when it comes out, and I'm just shocked that it's a Stefan Feld game I enjoy. Like, I know I sound like I'm badgering on the poor bloke. He's lovely, and he makes fantastic games for people. If you love the ones that I hate, go right ahead. But just understand my perspective here. Someone who has normally not really gelled with a lot of Stefan Feld games, to suddenly come across one that has really sung to me is pretty high praise for me, you gotta admit, okay? You know, I am upfront and honest about where I come from before I get into these games. People say you've got to go into it with a complete clean slate. I'm sorry, that is not physically possible. Do you do the internet? It just doesn't work that way. So, yeah, really solid card game. Give it a try. It's a bit pricey. Tends to sell for a price that I think is a little bit high for a bunch of cards and a few boards. And certainly check that insert, but yeah, if you're a Feld fan, or even if you're not a Feld fan, because I'm not a Feld fan and I still love this game, but if you like a little cool abstract card game, grab it. 8 out of 10, really solid. And then finally, Dominant Species Marine. Yes, I know this is a big heavy game and I'm trying to do it in a semi-blitz format, but I'm not going to spend ages on this. But this one I played after I have played only a couple of times, I admit, but the original Dominant Species. I like Dominant Species. Dominant Species I think is a good game. Does have some problems I'm not a fan of though, and it's not to do with the meanness in it. I mean, the meanness can hurt you and it is a pretty long game, but I'm more concerned with the fact that it's a super long game. I mean, it can take 4+ hours easily, goes up to 6 players, which just makes it far too chaotic and again, far too long. But also, there were certain mechanics in it that I was not a big fan of. I wasn't a fan of the way the action selection was done. You essentially had to like, not only did you have to kind of gauge what cards and various other effects were going to do, but you also had to gauge a programming aspect for the entire action board. So you put your action pawns out, you had restrictions on where they could go, but then you didn't quite know how they were going to affect because you had to wait until the end of the round when they all resolved in order. That is A, hard to gauge, B, can result in some really mean and destructive plays at times, and C, results in some of the worst analysis paralysis I have seen for several heavy games. That being said, I do enjoy it. This one though, single-handedly kills Dominant Species.
Wow, that was pretty brutal even by my standards. No backsies.
I'm sorry, I cannot fathom why you would play... Fathom. That was not a pun, alright? That's not a pun. But I cannot fathom why you would not choose this over Dominant Species. Unless you are desperate to play it with 5 or 6 players, because this one caps at 4. But what this is basically a, still heavy, but meant to be a kind of more streamlined version of Dominant Species. You are basically dealing with fish creatures. You got like, reptiles, fish, cephalopods, and crustaceans. You're dealing with marine creatures. But it's the same context of the game. You are basically like area control over Earth. You've got the different hexes of different types of terrain, and on what I have to say, for GMT standards, is a pretty well-produced game. You have this whopping great big board here. Jesus, wow, it's like, damn, that's a big board. But you essentially have a big area control bit of Earth, and the action board over here, and you're still doing what you do in Dominant Species. You're vying to be the dominant species. So you've got your cubes representing your species on the board. You've got different cards that you can grab, these evolution cards, which allow you to like trigger off really cool effects. But you've got lots of different actions that you do, which involve you putting various food tokens around the board to say where your species can habit. So like if I really need to eat worms, then I need to put worms on the corner of these hexes, otherwise my species can't survive there, it's in danger of going extinct, and so on and so forth. Each player has a player board that explains a lot of the rules in index form, and trust me, you're going to need to refer to this a lot. But, you know, other than that, the components are mainly some pretty cool tiles. I mean, decent quality tiles, even if the artwork is fairly basic. A lot of different, couple of nice felt bags, although strangely enough the rulebook refers to a black bag and this is a white one. It's kind of weird. Must have been a different stage in design. And some pretty decent pawns. You got to put a few stickers on some of them, but not that many. But, you know, considering GMT tend to do fairly lackluster production on a lot of their games, I thought this was pretty decent, or at least a lot more colourful than a lot of their games. Have you seen Twilight Struggle? Yeah, compare this one to that one, you can see which one looks better. And this one sounds better than the original Dominant Species that I think has cones and stuff. It's like, seriously, cones? But, you know, if you've played one, you definitely get the same feel from the other. But where's the main differences? Well, here, like I say, 4-player cap, right? Time length, 2 hours. 2.5 tops. 4 players, at most 3 hours if you've got slow players and it's your first game with teaching. But honestly, you know, I did a 3-player game of this in about 2 hours plus the teach, and it was my first game. You know, that's pretty good going compared to the normal Dominant Species. If you're all familiar with the game, I dare say you could probably do a 2-hour 4-player game of this. I really do think it's possible. I've not done a 4-player in that time because I've usually been teaching the game, but trust me, I think it's actually probably doable. But the rulebook itself, really good. GMT really do good rulebooks here, and this has got a decent blend of text as well as pictorial examples for everything. It goes into different concepts you need to know ahead of time, then how player turns work, and then all the different actions that are on that side of the board, of which there's a lot, it can be daunting. There's half a column on each page, a column on each page, like half a page devoted to every action with bullet point text and a pictorial representation of how it works. Yes, you may have to spend a little bit of time absorbing this rulebook because it's not the shortest rulebook, a good 22 pages odd, but I felt like I could teach the game pretty well afterwards. I think I got one rule wrong, and it wasn't even a biggie rule, but most of it I was able to remember pretty well, not necessarily because the game is that intuitive, but just because the rulebook does such a good job of explaining it. Kudos to whoever wrote this rulebook, seriously, top marks. But let's talk about more of the gameplay. That action selection chart that you have, previously you programmed it. Now it's immediate. You put the pawn on there, you do the action, next player's turn. The idea being that when you place it on the hierarchy on the chart, you can't place the pawn before one you've already placed without some special pawns that you can get hold of. So you think, well, I really want to do that action, but then if I do it, I can't do the other actions I feel like doing. But so-and-so there is going, Gemma's gonna like really screw me over if she does the action first, and I know she wants to do it, so I better go there, but then I'm going to have to waste a turn collecting like a couple of pawns back or doing a bunch of actions I might not necessarily want to do, but I need to because timing is so key here. Somebody could really mess you over if you don't get in there first. You've got to really pay attention to the opponents. This is not a game you play if you like multiplayer solitaire. No. This is interactive. I need to know what you're up to. You're in my face. We are area controlling the board. I need to know if I can screw you over by taking away your food supply. I need to know if you're going to do the same thing to me. And the evolution cards that you can grab, which I really like, these cool, powerful effects that you can trigger depending on how far they are in on the track itself, is like, oh, I really need to grab that card, but if I don't grab it, you might grab it. Oh, what do I do? It's like, these are really important decisions you gotta make, but not having to do the programming side really does cut the analysis paralysis down, and that is one big plus for me. It's already more colourful, it already looked brilliant. I mean, you saw that board, it was huge, and yet like blue with all the different terrain colours of yellow, green and that. This is one of the prettier games that GMT have put out, let's face it. Yeah, granted, cylinders and cubes, we've seen that in most other games, but again, it's chunky wooden pieces. The card stock is pretty solid as well, kind of got this weird little glossy finish like they tend to do, but it means I don't desperately have to think about sleeving it. I mean, I may sleeve it, I'm just not sure if I really need to. I think they're pretty sturdy as is. And I like the way that your player reference board has the actions in abbreviated form. So when you're a little bit hazy on the rules, it's like, oh, how does tectonics work again? Oh yeah, select a tile, then remove, and then, oh I see, alright, I get it now. Really handy. And there's two sides if you want to make the starting setup a little bit more random, compared to the normal side. Honestly, pick whatever, it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, it's, turn order is based on what creature type you've done, but if you're generally going first in turn order, you're also losing to ties. That same sort of deal from dominant species is in this one. The evolution cards are still good fun, but mainly the distinguishing feature with this one compared to the other one is that it is shorter, more streamlined, easier to learn, easier to play, certainly easier to play, but yet retains the strong theme, the agonizing decisions, and the meaty Euro-ness that the game is good for. So I honestly don't know why you would play the other one. If you've got 5 or 6 players, fine. You can't do that with this one, you're going to want the original. But this new one looks better, this new one is prettier, it's easier to play, more streamlined, better rulebook, better board, better system of actions. I don't like the programming system in the other one. I think that just drags the game on too much, whereas this one, it's immediate, but it still gives you the hierarchy problem of, like, can't place it before, but then you can get the special pawns if you dominate a certain type of food element, and so with those pawns, you've got actions that are more powerful that only you can use. You can kick off other players' pawns, or you can place your pawn further back than normally you could. It's a really cool little system. There's different ways to, different paths to victory. Are you going to control lots of areas? Are you going to go after vents? Are you going to just expand Earth a lot of times and get points there? Are you going to use the evolution cards? I feel like this is not only a good strategy game, but really a good tactical game as well. If I'm struggling to think of too many flaws with this. I mean, it's a bit of an investment in the rules. It's certainly a bit of a... it's an investment in the rules. It definitely mean you're not going to want to play this game if you don't like meanness, because this one will potentially have people punching you in the face on a regular basis, but you can dish out as much as you can take. You know, someone takes that food away from your supply, that means that a couple of your things go extinct, fine. But I'm going to take this evolution card that means I can replace some of your gene guys with my guys. So your crabs go away and I replace them with other little fishies. So it's like, yep, it goes both ways. Although occasionally you might get a game where somebody is kind of left in the lurch with not a lot to do because it really didn't go too well for them. But it's a shorter game than the original, so whatever. So I mean, the aesthetics are good. They're not fantastic, but they are a lot better than the original. It's hard to say what to rate. I'm tempted by the highest one, but I don't think it quite gets to that level. Maybe it will after more plays. Maybe I would like more evolution cards, because you can tailor the length of the game based on the cards. I mean, if you want to make it shorter than 2.5 hours, you can just take some cards out of the deck. If you want an epic length, like 4-hour game, you just add more cards in. So you can do what you like in terms of the game length. But everything else is smooth and elegant. But I would like a bit more variety in these. So yeah, you know what? Dominant Species Marine achieves a 9 out of 10. A seal of distinction. I would have probably given Dominant Species a 7, maybe a 6. Just because, like I say, takes too long, drags out like crazy, the aesthetics are worse. That programming aspect I'm not the biggest fan of. I'd probably give it a 7 maybe overall, but this one is easily a 9. I instantly have played this. I have showed this to people, friends of mine who have played Dominant Species, and their first reaction was, we don't need to play Dominant Species anymore. They agreed with me. I think this is a direct replacement. Now, if it's not a direct replacement for you, because I know there are some die-hard Dominant Species fans who will cry out blasphemy to hear me go that this is better than the original, which is fine. Pick one. Honestly, if you're playing at least one of the 2 Dominant Species games, you're in with a winner, because it's a solid Euro game. I don't think I own another GMT game in my collection, because I don't tend to go for all those historical war ones. Not a fan of Twilight Struggle, and I really don't care about half of these weird historical ones where it's like, you know, the something war, 1712 to 1764, whatever. It's like, none of those interest me. This is one of the only games that has really caught my eye, because I think the theme is super strong and just interesting. I love it. It's a cool theme. You know, Dominant Species, you've done it. 9 out of 10 in my collection. I think you sit there at the moment, and there you shall stay. In fact, I'm playing this tomorrow, in fact, with some friends, because I want to teach another mate. So, yeah, I look forward to that. Hopefully they can expand this later and bring some more evolution cards. I'd like to see more of these, maybe find a way to distinguish the factions a little bit more. But 9 out of 10, I love this game. So there you have it. A long video. I do apologise. You know, Blitz. I think I need to find a new word for the Blitz one. But as I say, a video of this length to do 4 games I think is not too bad, actually, considering how big this one is. But yeah, Dominant Species Marine, 9 out of 10. Kokopelli, 8 out of 10. Dreadful Circus, 7 out of 10. And Edge of the Earth doesn't really get a rating. It's basically more cards. But the new format, I still think really positive change, and I definitely look forward to more stuff from here. So yeah, there's 4 games that you've wanted me to give my opinions on, and I am tired. So that's it for me. I'm going to sign off this and get on with some more of the top 100. So that's it for me on another episode. If you like what you see, please remember to leave a comment and a thumbs up. It means the world to me to know that you appreciate the content, and I'd like to know your thoughts on what you think of these games and my opinions of them. Do you agree or disagree? Let's talk about it. Don't forget that the channel is also officially sponsored by Zatu.co.uk. Check out their website and see if you can find something on there at a decent price to fill a gap in your shelf. Perhaps Dominant Species Marine or Kokopelli or one of these other games. I'm sure they've got them in stock. And if you want to check out more content on the channel, then you can check out the top 100, where I have got 2 videos there on the screen for you to get you started on what has been a very fun and popular series. So take care, and remember, as always, it's only a game. Bye for now.